Right now, there is a prevailing view that men are privileged. Every member of this group can be generalized as being in possession of this modern indictment privilege, and thus they need to take a back seat. Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness.
Male privilege is sufficiently ingrained to be voiced publicly, regularly. Men dominate casual conversations, professional meetings, every possible genre of journalism, and even Twitter, because men are constantly being told that their opinions are worth hearing. They're confident enough to constantly express their opinions. And because women are incorrectly perceived as the more talkative sex, they struggle to push back against this deeply entrenched sexism without being labeled as aggressive or unreasonable. There's no easy solution to this maddeningly persistent issue, but there are several steps each individual can take. Teachers need to make a constant, genuine effort to listen to and respect their female students. Women need to remind themselves that they deserve to be heard as much as anyone else. And men, you guys need to take a step back. I'm not in agreement with the third and fourth to last sentences. It's those last two sentences that are problematic. Why are we playing a zero-sum game? That was a long intro, but it's really important because this is from an article written by our guest today, Dr. Todd Kashdan, a professor of psychology at George Mason University and a leading authority on well-being, curiosity, which incidentally is what our next episode is going to be about, and psychological flexibility and resilience. He has published over 225 peer-reviewed articles and is in the top 1% of cited scientists in the world. And he is a twin with twin 18-year-old daughters and one more, with plans to rapidly populate the world with great conversationalists. Hey, welcome to the show, Todd.
Great to be here.
And Will, brother, good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. Hey, three men coming together again for the show. Excited. I love the show. So, Todd, we really appreciate you being here. Just before we dive into this wonderful article, coming from that wonderful intro we just had, just to remind everybody, tap into Men Talking Mindfulness. Head to mentalkingmindfulness.com, see what we're up to, or text MTM to 33777. And you can find out we have a couple of courses coming up this fall. By the time you're hearing this, we have one coming up October 6th, 9-week meditation course. Check it out, mentalkingmindfulness.com. And before we go anywhere, and Todd, what we like to do is we like to ground, one breath, grounding practice, just to kind of help us to focus, help us to center, and also teach a little bit that, and really sometimes all it takes is one breath to really help you get more present to the moment and light up your biology on the inside. So we're just going to all take a exhale out. Maybe close your eyes if you like so you can feel more of your breath. Let's take a giant inhale through the nose. Big breath. A little bit more. Top it off. Hold it. 3, 2, 1, and let it go out slowly. Easy. And feel that grounding, natural kind of downward effect of the breath down into your body, down into your feet, into your seat. And that's it. Hey, everybody that's listening, we really appreciate you being here. Thank you for listening. Share this with your people. Maybe take a little screenshot and send it out there on your Instagram and say, hey, I'm listening to Men Talking Mindfulness. I'm getting a little more badass because I'm being more mindful.
That's right.
Okay. Awesome, guys. All right, John.
Yeah, Todd, man, again, welcome to the show. We're excited to have this. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart and Will's heart. We've had several conversations about similar things. We've had Ed Frauenheim and Ed Adams on that talked about reinventing masculinity. And I had your article sent to me by a mutual friend. The article is on Substack titled Men Deserve Some Compassion. And I was like, even just the title, I was like, I got to have this guy on the show. Yeah. And then reading the article itself, I was like, absolutely, I'm determined to get this guy on the show. So that said, let's start with some of your personal journey, man. I know in the article you shared that you grew up without a father, and you kind of scratching and trying to find a father figure in your life. How did that journey of yours help to define your understanding of masculinity?
Yeah, we'll get to this term really soon, which will be precarious
Yeah.
manhood.
Right. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
and in some ways, when this is something to think about, if you grew up with a father around and you had a full intact family, it's worth having this moment of perspective taking of what it's like for someone that doesn't, which is that who do you then turn to for a role model for someone that looks like you, has your some semblance of your genetic code, and then like what's it like to be a man? So what do you turn to? You turn to television, you turn to the news, you turn to what your peers are telling you. You're looking for the extreme outliers because you want to figure out how do you get the greatest things in life. So who's the happiest person you know? Who's the strongest person you know physically? Who's the mentally strongest person that you know? Who's the most popular and who's the most successful financially, relationship wise, gym wise, career wise? And so you could already see the problem with trying to create this Justice League of America of male characters is that I've just scratched the surface at the surface level in terms of what makes a man. And underneath that can be very problematic personality traits to people who could be on high on psychopathy and selfishness and narcissism, which is an overused term, or quarrelsomeness. And all of those traits could be common among all these people that are at these high level, high functioning features in society. And so that's what I've done. And what I had to do initially is reverse engineer what made these people successful. Like what made someone tell a story where an entire group of people would stop what they're doing and pay attention. And what happened for those people that told a bad story or just didn't or gave away the ending too quickly and they lost the crowd's attention. And so it's a very labor intensive inefficiency in the system to try to figure out how to be a man if you don't have someone around you.
Yeah. Well, what brought you into manhood? Like, how did you get to where you are? Because, you just mentioned all those things about public speaking. Like, you obviously are doing very well. How did you fill in that gap?
I think one of the things is sports was your typical easily, it's like chutes and ladders. This is basically the ladder that pops up in the middle of the board game and you get to jump 3 levels if you play sports and you're good in sports. And that's as true today as it was in 1930 in terms of manhood. And more so it's becoming also for womanhood as well. And so I was good at sports. I got a track scholarship to Cornell University for doing shot put, which is not the path to popularity, throwing a 16-pound ball as far as you can, but it is a path to getting a couple of bucks and getting into a school that intellectually you don't belong in. So little things like that, breadcrumbs, you add them up and you can end up having a successful life. It's actually a very interesting thing to think about, which is that you don't need the big kahuna accomplishment. You don't need the perfect score in the SAT. You don't need the whatever is, I don't know if it's still the head cheerleader, your stereotypical most popular heterosexual partner in high school. You don't need that. You need little breadcrumbs that add up over time and you can be quite successful. I think that's what happened for me.
What that added to more confidence? Like that just because of your success in athletics and I'd imagine, and I was an athlete, John was an athlete. Like, and when I set a record or did this or won a race or just beat my brother, I just got I had a sense of more accomplishment, more proud, more confidence as well.
You beat your brother in a competition, not you physically beat your brother down.
Right. Well, both.
Or both.
Actually, he can really beat my ass personally. So I really enjoyed beating him in cross country. To be honest, anyway. So good. Anyway, Todd, over to you. Thanks for.
It's a great question. So there's a few things. So we're talking about do you feel efficacious? Do you feel like you have enough mastery about the environment that you can then go do something that is totally unrelated to the thing that you develop mastery about? So if you're extremely good at woodshop, extremely good with cars, it's not like the skill transfers over in terms of forming good friendships or being really effective at negotiating a really low car price at a car dealership. But It's that sense of competence that you walk into the room with, which is the physical way that you walk through the room, the psychological way that you communicate about yourself, your thoughts, your feelings of what's possible influences to some degree other people around you. So that's one part of it, is the efficaciousness. The other part, there's probably like 17 different dimensions, is in the 1970s, scientists talked about the benefits of weak ties over strong social ties.
Right.
And you might have talked about this on this podcast before. And the notion of sports is, if you are a really good competitor, you are often beloved by your adversaries, that actually they despise you and yet approve of you and have, they have, respect for you at the same time.
Yeah.
And so you develop these ties where you would see them in shopping. Remember, this is the 1980s and 90s. So you'd see them at malls, you see them at movie theaters.
Mall.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that will not know what that is.
Yeah, you just dated yourself like big time.
And there's something really beautiful about walking into a place where you don't expect to know anyone physically, not the virtual world. And all of a sudden you're like, hey, aren't you the guy that crushed me in track, like at that one meet where it was like raining like nonstop for 2 hours? And all of a sudden, that weak tie, it's such a cute way of connecting that they're like, oh my God, guys, you have to meet this guy Todd. Like this guy Todd, like would not stop talking and making jokes right up until the event, like they blew the whistle and the event started. Like, this is the guy who was like the great conversationalist from track I spoke about before. And those weak ties, as you build many of them, your social capital gets so big and so powerful so quickly. And the thing about weak ties that's probably worth mentioning is that people are more willing to give you a favor if they're a weak tie, because the relationship is not on stable footing yet. And so you're more inclined to give some generosity because you know the payoff of being kind is quite high compared to someone who you're nice with and you split dinners and you split bar tabs with on a regular basis.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And I got to come back to your going to Cornell and being an athlete there. One of our business partners, he was the quarterback at Cornell, so he's like the epitome of the male masculine model, right? But that said, you mentioned the oversimplification of male privilege in your article, and I'd like to know how you suggest that we change this narrative in that broader societal conversation.
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces to this. I mean, one thing that's important is to me, I think that actually it's no longer a useful term. If it's applied universally to 50% of the species, which is men, then it's no longer has any useful characteristic for describing somebody. And the problem is that it is the same time we're getting a societal message that vulnerability is a positive thing, a la Brene Brown and all of the work that she's been doing. Resilience is actually what makes you grow into virtue and character strengths. And it's the obstacle is the pathway for you developing to your full potential. So when you combine these three things together, there's incongruity. You can't become vulnerable and share things about yourself if you know it's going to be in a file drawer and potentially used against you. You can't end up becoming resilient if you're not given sufficient opportunity to throw yourself out there, make mistakes, fail, say stupid things, get feedback, respond to that feedback in an open way, and then improve yourself for round 2, 3, and 4. So if you're dismissed initially, or even at round 2, you don't have the training ground. You don't have fertile territory to reach your full potential. And so in some ways, as designating someone as having too much privilege without knowing what that actually means for that individual is to deny diversity in terms of thoughts, experiences, background. Every single one of us has met different people, taken new perspectives, adopted certain ones, discarded other perspectives. The books you've read in some ways is like a little bit of a portal to what your mind has. So you're dismissing cognitive diversity. You're dismissing resilience as a training ground, and you're dismissing the idea that vulnerability is actually a great way to connect socially with other people if you lead with this thing called privilege.
And And with that privilege and the quote that I read at the beginning, it ended with men are told to take a step back, right? Like, hey, women are elevated, and men are told, hey, not only are we going to elevate women, but men need to take a step back. What's the danger of that zero sum game with these gender dynamics?
Yeah. I'm glad we're referring this to non-zero sum game, because I don't want anything I say to be dismissive of women.
Of course.
Me as someone raising 3 daughters, and the fact is, what organization besides maybe a coal mine does not have like sufficient women capital that makes the best things that organization produces? I think the important thing is this: men aren't going anywhere. Women aren't going anywhere. So there has to be some way to coexist and collaborate. That's the simple answer. Is if you hire, let's just talk about the workforce and the educational system. If you hire and retain people that have an XY chromosome that's there, is what are you doing if you're saying, let's dismiss your talent, let's make sure it's kept under wraps, hide, avoid, conceal, suppress all of the ideas you have, and our team will be smarter, wiser, and make better decisions. That is the direct downstream consequences from saying that the men should wait, and actually the platform should only be for those that don't have an XY chromosome. Now in the school, it's even worse, and I know that we're going to get to this, and I'm actually jumping ahead.
Go for it.
Men were once boys. And all of a sudden, when you start to hold the perspective that women were once girls and men were once boys, and see, like the little boy when you meet 50-year-old me, and every person you meet, you start to realize is they had to figure a lot of things out, and a lot of things weren't granted towards them. And there's a great body of research that shows that those people at the lowest socioeconomic class in society, so opportunity poor environments, the places where there aren't grocery stores because they realize there's so much criminal activity, it's not worth it financially for us to even have a place there. So they have to travel 30, 40 miles. In that place, insufficient nutrition, insufficient energy, it's hard to learn. But at the highest level of the socioeconomic stratus in your communities, the extremely wealthy parents who focus so much on work as the nucleus of their lives that they're not attentive and mindful of their kids and being involved in their lives, they suffer similar mental health and psychological and growth difficulties as people at the lowest end. Wow. And when you start to realize is that there are more levels of the social strata that are experiencing psychological and social difficulties, you ask yourself, do I want to start from a place that I assume that 50% of the population is not only doing okay, but doing so well that I can dismiss them? Or, as a contrast, let me just have that deliberate pause, like the start of this podcast, of taking a breath and saying, I have no idea what their perspective is. So before I say you have to escape and hide, or you can approach and say what you're thinking about, let me actually just pause and try to get your perspective.
Wow.
Yeah, it's something that we don't do enough of, for sure.
Yeah. We skip to perspective taking, but we forget that the phase before that is perspective getting.
Right. Yeah. And we all have, yeah, it's just like, it's weird. It's strange. I got to say that, like, we're having this conversation about men because, like, we're men's podcast, or two men talking about mindfulness. But like, we're really like in this interesting paradigm where just men are just like, we're being dismissed for whatever reason. Like, it's like, it's very, I don't know. I just don't get it. Like, I don't like, we are contributors. We're big time contributors to the world. And we have a lot of things that we continually contribute. Sometimes, what we're learning and what we hear from a lot of men and a lot of men that kind of take our courses and stuff, it's like we're learning how to be better men, and how to like be more vulnerable, like you talked about earlier, and like and listen more instead of speaking and providing solutions. But we need some work too, but like we still should be included in the conversation and not just being told to like take a step back,
Yeah. So I have this concrete example that comes to mind. I read this self-published book that was, I'd recommend it. It's called Pen Pal. It's a sci-fi horror psychological thriller. In the book is a very, very gruesome child abuse, incest scene that's in there. And the purpose of it is not to titillate the audience. The purpose is to say, this is atrocious, and kind of we're setting up the character for being like kind of the bad guy. People love this novel. And then they realized that the anonymously written book was written by a man. And you can go on Goodreads right now and look at the comments of, I love the book. And then I realized that the author was a male. And who the hell is a male to describe what it's like to be a young girl and to be sexually assaulted by their father in the story that happens there? And I just thought that was like a really interesting societal, indicator in terms of you love the book, and now all of a sudden there's a rewrite in your brain because of the gender, the sex of the author that happens there. And that, just imagine if we went through life where you went through a museum that you didn't have the titles of any of the paintings or sculptures, you didn't have the names of who created them, and what do you gravitate towards? And so you just observe people, watch people, and then have people like take pictures. They come out of the museum and they show you the pictures, like, these things were freaking amazing. Like, and then all of a sudden you have some, I don't know, social policeman or policewoman come to the patron of the museum and say, but did you know that 80% of the photos that you have, those are male painters and male sculptors? How do you feel about yourself now? And if you think that image is somewhat, Fahrenheit 451-ish and Orwellian-ish, to think about that, that's kind of what's happening in modern society.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. It's disheartening. Yeah, John.
No, I was basically going to say the same thing you did. Said, I mean, I can agree with the one point that you say. In one regard, I can agree in that how can a man describe what you said was described in the book, but not knowing whether it was a man or a woman authoring the book, and then having basically, I love the word that, or how you phrased it, is that book was basically rewritten in your head in an instant when you found out that it was a male author, which kind of leads me to my next question and something that you referred to earlier, is that precarious manhood, right? That precarious manhood hypothesis, as you call it. And I would just want to read a little bit of the article here and kind of jump around a little bit too. But you call manhood as basically being a castle built on the sand, right? It looks great on the outside, but on the inside, it's much more vulnerable. It's built on that sand. It's vulnerable to the tides. And then you said, picture a man's social status as a tightrope. On one side, he's adopting societal expectations. He must be competitive, must showcase power and strength, must be willing to take risks, must be active, must be decisive, must be situated as someone who can be an ample provider to others. That's the one side. And on the other, he's wrestling with the fear of being unable to live up to this caricature of masculinity and will lose any status that comes with it. It's a high stakes balancing act, and the fear of missteps lead to anxiety and stress. Man, that's right then when I read that, I was like, okay, yeah, definitely getting this guy on the show, man. So can you elaborate on that precarious manhood?
I shouldn't even talk. This is why I'm an author. I just let the words
just right.
You haven't make it terrible.
You haven't read the article in a while. I'm assuming you're like, damn, that was actually pretty good.
Yeah. No, we have people I'm like, say that. That's not bad. That's not.
Yeah. Like, wait, I wrote that.
But so I didn't come up with a hypothesis, but it's a really powerful one, and I suspect that many people that are listening understand it, and I suspect a lot of mothers who have boys actually understand this as well. Which is, how many times did a kid come home between the ages of 4 and 23 and say, like, I fucking failed. Like, I failed. I lost the girl in this relationship. I didn't get this job. This guy talks smack to me. I was too nervous to say anything. And just like a Jerry Seinfeld episode, all of a sudden now in my head are a bunch of witty remarks that if I can only go back and return to that moment, someone stepped up to me in the subway for no reason and said I was in their personal space, and I moved. And I just feel like I'm just like this weak creature. These are very common. I mean, I've had this kind of experience many times growing up in New York City in my lifetime. And I've written about some of them, and some friends know about some of them, and other people I just would never tell them, because I do try to walk that tightrope, not because I want to, because I feel the societal pressure. Even at the age of 50, I'm regularly in situations, because I work out and I have a little bit of musculature in my body still. So people often play King of the Hill, which is if I can knock down the biggest person in the room, then I get your title. It's kind of just like, you could beat Mike Tyson, you're the champ. For many years in boxing. And there's an element of that in every group where there is some semblance of a social hierarchy. Is that if I can show I'm the wittiest person here, I win everyone's affection. If I can show everyone I'm the smartest person in the room, a la Enron, I can make a ton more money than I'm making right now. And that mentality, that zero-sum mentality is baked into the nature of masculinity, starting from the role models that we have from films, from books, and just passed down from generation. I mean, you could just read ancient Greek and Roman mythology and look for all of the primary characters who are men, is they have to prove themselves not only against the gods who are trying to deceive them, but also show that they are worthy of the blessings of the gods by being better, more of a champion compared to their fellow manhood. So this is thousands of years old, this concept. And it really is a hidden source of anxiety, depression, anger, eating difficulties, and something I definitely want to put on the table, which is body dysmorphia.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, could I just like a little, I don't know, side note, but it's just like, I mean, I want to see that change. There is what I'm understanding, and there are some necessary steps to kind of step into your full masculinity, but I still feel that pecking order. I feel that hierarchy in certain situations with certain groups of men, whereas I feel with different groups of more mature men, we don't really give a shit. Like John and I here, there's no like, oh, I gotta beat John, or I gotta be better than John. I gotta speak smarter than John right now. I don't care at all. Like, I mean, I love John. We work together. Like, we're literally like one mind around this. And it's like, and I really appreciate us experiencing like this kind of flow that we get in, and the success of the flow that we feel. We just kind of jump into these conversations and have a good time. Like, do you see this changing, or there psychological methods that are coming forward in order to kind of, organize men and in a different way? Yeah.
So let me, so once my grad student, now she's her own professor about to get tenure, Fallon Goodman. She did some research, and it was, what is the number one predictor of having a positive social interaction, men and women? And well, if you were to take a guess, if you were to think of like, what is the number one predictor? What the number one mechanism in a conversation that would make it such that this is an incredible, high quality conversation? What would you say?
Vulnerability.
Listening and vulnerability. Both, I think they require, I'd say, being a good listener, which requires vulnerability.
So when you put those into the mixed martial arts octagon against what you find is that the ability to be, and this is exactly, Will, what you described with John, the ability to be effortlessly yourself around other people.
Authenticity.
And I think it is such, it's even more than that. It's the idea is like, it is a low maintenance interaction. So there's a certain amount of energy right now, the three of us having a conversation. We are talking about intellectual topics, we're talking about society. We want to make sure, even though we're talking about men, that we also are including and non-dismissive of women. There's a lot of things, balls in the air that we're thinking about here. We're thinking about very audience-centric, what's going to be useful and unique compared to other conversations about men in society. With all that happening, there's a certain level of energy and it's working memory that's required to have this conversation. Anything that makes that such that less energy is required than necessary for having that conversation gets us to a low maintenance interaction. We cherish this. We love the idea that I can effortlessly say and stumble on my words and forget who the authors are of a study and get the details wrong and say like, all right, wait, let me redo that again. Miss the kind of denouement for a story that I'm telling. And I'm not going to beat myself up a bit because I'm feeling so comfortable and effortless with you. It is a quality that I think deserves to be described. Like, and it's not, I don't think authenticity is enough to capture it. I think it's being effortlessly yourself, because this is the thing that is basically the diametrical opposite of what it is to experience precarious manhood in
the fucking tightrope. Yeah, you get off the tightrope, right? You don't feel like I'm going to fall or fail, right? Like you're just like, here I am, both feet on the ground, like it or not, this is what you get. Like, I mean, absolutely. Like I feel that when you say that, I'm like, oh, fuck yeah, that's the success. Again, part of the success of what we do here is this authenticity, but also being, what do you say, raw, uncut, unapologetic. It's like, this is what you get. If you don't want to tune in, fine. If you want to tune in, great. Because like it's, I love that.
Will is definitely effortlessly himself. I mean, and that's one of the things I appreciate about you, Will, is that you are. I mean, it's awesome.
It's so endearing because, and I don't want to blame everything on social media because that's a trite, contrived, appallingly boring discussion. But there is some element where society has pushed us to be more obsessive about our public persona as opposed to what is our actual persona. And anything we can do to reduce the distance between who we want to be publicly and who we are, you are moving in the direction of having a more profound way of walking through life.
Yeah, but we want to reduce that delta by bringing our demonstrated persona back down to our real persona versus trying to take our real persona and catch up with that demonstrated persona, right? So I think that's where we fail, is that we're trying to live as closely to the social media or whatever, the mask that we wear, the armor that we carry. And that is where a lot of that stress and anxiety comes from. But if rather we can strip off that armor, take off that mask publicly, say, look, this is who I truly am. I'm what was it? Effortlessly myself. I love that term, by the way. Yeah. Then that's where we're going to maybe reduce some of that stress and anxiety.
So let's play with the question that Will said, which is what psychological tools have popped out that are useful. Yeah. I'll go through I'm just more familiar with my own life than anyone else. I'll give a concrete example of a struggle and then a strategy that kind of used. So when I first entered into the field of well-being science, and I've been doing this for over 20 years before it was cool, is someone anointed me with the title of the guns of positive psychology, because I have big biceps.
Love that.
And so, and it was, and this falls with precarious manhood, because it's, once you get the title, I feel a sense of pride and accomplishment, because genetically, my dad is an ectomorph. He's a very skinny character I've been talked to since I was like 12. So I beat my genetics. So I worked hard for it. And yet, as soon as that term came out, that moniker for me, I became a little bit defined by this public thing, and kind of like wore tight shirts, like kind of like Todd showing off my arm.
Show off
maybe
the guns.
Like a little bit more that happens there, because that's like the public persona.
Look at Will; he's rolling his sleeves up.
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
It's cross country arm.
Yeah, no, I lift now, Todd. I lift.
No, I can see the definition between
striation.
Your front deltoid, your front deltoid, and your brachialis. I can see that.
Look at that.
Nice job. So I was on one of those outdoor American Ninja Warrior rope courses in Myrtle Beach a couple of years ago, and I saw this let's just say like unfit looking body do this amazing, just doing the rings, just going across the marshes of South Carolina. And I was tired, and I was like, all right, I was going to stop. I'm like, well, if he can do it. And then I was doing the rings, and all of a sudden I heard a pop, and my left bicep, just the tendon broke. And all of a sudden it was just a ton of blood surged right towards my elbow, and just big mass of skin and flesh and blood. And by the way, I am still hanging about 30 yards in the air on a ring by two arms. And I just know that one of my biceps just shredded while I was on there. So finish the ring toss, get there at the end. And the woman says, "You don't look okay." And here's the weird, side note, it actually feels incredible because the tendon breaks away from the bone. And so actually there's no tension. And so it feels wonderful. Like there's no tension in the left arm of your body. Yet there's a pool of blood and flesh just sitting there like a huge Popeye ball on your arm. And you're like, and so when she said, like, it looks really bad, I'm like, it feels great, but I think something really bad just happened there. And so it took me a year and a half to get back into the gym. I was, it took 6 weeks before I could lift up a can of beans, about 12 weeks before I can carry a grocery bag that had anything in it whatsoever. And so what happened is I had to basically re-identify as someone that has no left arm, much less like a big arm that happens there. Now, there's a beautiful, quick strategy of getting there, which is called diffusion, which is basically is you separate the thing you identify with is because I can notice the thing. It's not a part of me because I'm able to have this observer self. And I know this is the mindfulness podcast. So you're aware of this. So the idea of I'm not my arms. I'm not my scuffed shoes. I'm not the ridiculous profanity-laden tirade that I just made because I can observe what I said. And that was more curse words that I wanted to say. I could observe my shoes and be like, you know what? It's probably time to change those things. So it's clearly not me. I can observe my bicep. And thus, as a result, it is part of me, but it doesn't define me. Doesn't have centrality to me. And the idea of like noticing something, and because you can notice something, it's not a part of you, is a very quick cognitive tool in a moment to really be able to appreciate something or maybe dislike something and yet realize my entire selfhood is not on the line for whatever is or whatever I say or whatever it is that I do.
Wow. Excellent. Let's get back to, thanks for that story. Like, and it's very, very true. It's like, I'm not my mind. I'm not my body. I'm not like the social media that I keep absorbing. It's like what it takes to really understand and get to know yourself is doing the work, like challenging yourself, meditating, doing hard things, because that's when you really begin to see yourself, get to develop more of that character, and also develop more of that like success and like kind of I can do this kind of attitude. And you keep bringing that self forward, things just really start to line up for you, work for you, like because you're walking around with more of real self-confidence and courage. And that's what it takes to really be authentically and unapologetically who you are in every fucking situation that you put yourself into. Like, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
One of the things that I do with my students is I create like a matrix, and that's how I want everyone listening to think about a matrix of value dimensions in humanity, men, women, everyone. So you could think about what's your sense of purpose in life? What's your ability to tolerate pain? What's your ability to handle rejection? To what degree are you physically strong? To what degree are you wise? To what degree are you funny? To what degree do you actually find things funny? To what degree do you have the capacity to love? To what degree do you have the capacity to be loved? So all these dimensions. And then what I tell them is this: you cannot max out on all these dimensions. There's trade-offs. You cannot spend your time becoming good in everything. You're going to have this very interesting, jagged profile based on your experiences and what you devote, just as well as you said, what you devote your training to focus on. And so what I want you to attend to, and I want you to write down and have a conversation with other people here in a group of 3, is where are you high that you're proud of? Where are you low that you're sort of slightly, we'll just use the word disappointed about in yourself? And where are you in the middle level and sort of accepting of the fact that there's a trade-off? You'll accept a 5 or 6 on a 10-point scale because you want to be exceptional in wisdom and intelligence and generosity, but you can't do it all. And it leads to great conversations about not having this precarious concern that you don't excel at everything.
Yeah. Let's get back on that tightrope of the precariousness, right? Falling either way, you're fucked, right? So what are the psychological impacts, that you've observed, who met like that live under this constant threat of like falling off that tightrope of the precarious man hypothesis?
Well, one is there's an interesting relational paradox that occurs with this, in that men who are walking on this tightrope of precarious manhood is that they have a hard time meeting the role of being a good partner, describing some of the things kind of you guessed before, as in terms of being a really good listener, being exceptionally compassionate, being fully present. It's very difficult to be fully present and active listening and very responsive when you're in your own head trying to be this exemplar of what makes an exceptional male partner in a relationship, same sex or opposite sex, doesn't matter. And so you are so self-focused when you're in these interactions, and because you're constantly calibrating, how am I doing compared towards that ideal of manhood right now? Because if you go online, or if you just read an article in the New Yorker or the Atlantic, you will see tons of articles written by women of saying, I want a man that kind of makes me feel as if I'm being protected. I want a man who is generous and kind. And the way I tell is how they respond to waiters and waitresses. I want a man who's good with kids and with pets and is loving and is really kind of selfless when they do things. I want a man who's accomplished and has very strong aspirational goals in doing things. And just like that jagged profile that I just mentioned before as an exercise with my class, you can't do it all. And so this notion of precarious manhood has this very interesting relationship paradox effect, which is that you try really hard to be a good partner, and in doing so, you are so outside of yourself that you actually end up being sometimes often people pleaser, the opposite of narcissism, and actually very submissive. And it's only possibly months or years later do you realize, well, who the hell am I outside of this relationship, because I've been spending so much time trying to be a good man in this relationship. And I think this is a missing part of the conversation. There's so much time spent on narcissism and selfishness that there's now almost no air and oxygen given to the idea of people losing themselves in their relationships, and men do it just like women do it sometimes.
Yeah.
and in that matrix, right, and in a relationship, if we're continually trying to be tens in all of these things, we end up being like twos in others. And that in a relationship, let's say I'm trying to be the perfect husband, perfect father, perfect provider, perfect protector, but now I've given up the nurturer, and I've given up the artist, I've given up the humor in me. And maybe that's what my spouse or my significant other was attracted to in me originally. And now, because I've tried to do all these other things that are manly or what I thought she wanted, now I've actually pushed her away by trying so hard to be what I thought she wanted, which is an interesting paradox. That said, I have a son. I've got 2 daughters and a son. How should I be teaching both? How should I be teaching my daughters with regard to their relationships with men, or as future mothers, future wives, as sisters to my son? And then how should I be teaching my son about this expanded definition of masculinity and how to keep from getting onto that tightrope in the first place?
Okay, so this is a 3,000-hour conversation. So let's see what we get. Let's see what we get into. So, so as someone who's raising 3 daughters, let me talk a little bit about kind of what my experience has been now that they're 18, and they're my workout partners at the gym. It's one of my favorite things I would never have expected when I had kids. It's the greatest moments of my life. There's just sending them a text of like, "Hey, who wants to go to the gym at 3:00 today?" And one of the things about raising kids that I think people forget is if you are judgmental when they provide information that you don't want to hear or you're not ready to hear. You are now, if you respond that way, you're going to lose access to intel. And so do you want access to intelligence, get all the information, or do you want to limit it because you're so concerned about curtailing them, constraining them, and making sure they do all the things you want to do? I would encourage everyone listening to err on the side of being open and listening. And if you have a partner and you're raising kids, you could talk smack about what happened and them on the side, but not your kid. Don't lose access to intel, because they'll do it. They will sniff out a narc, and they will, and all of a sudden, when they have problems in their relationships or a strange encounter and they're uncertain, you're just not going to hear about it, but they might have something really bad that happens later. So let me actually make that concrete. Often I'll be at the gym. We won't go at the same time, but I'll show up later, and I'll have Chloe or Raven, my two twins, who are 18. They'll be like, "Dad, come over here," and they'll be on the treadmill. They'll slow it down, and I'll come next to them. I'm like, "All right, don't look. There's a guy who's like your age over there in the gym," and he smiled at me, and I just smiled back. Nothing, didn't think anything of it. All of a sudden, he pops next to me and says, "Hey, I want to take you out for dinner." And I was like, so now the typical male father response is going to protector mode, but protector mode is also judgmental mode. And that's the wrong mentality to be. It's like your first open, receptive, "Hey, let me know. Wait, let me know. Chloe, you didn't give the detail. How'd you respond when he walked over?" And he's like, "Dad, I did exactly what you said," which was my heart was beating out of my chest. And I turned to him and said, "Listen, like, I'm underage. I'm not interested. I didn't show you that I was interested. I think you're jumping the gun." And the guy's like, "I'm so sorry," and ran off.
Oh,
and
wow.
Well, there are other stories that are worse than that.
But
and
still,
then,
that's incredible strength on her part to say that. I mean, wow.
We talk about this. We talk about, they're 5'8". I mean, they work out. So like, men think that they're older than they are. So we've been having this conversation for a long time. Not saying I don't want you to be around adult men, more in terms of, hey, let's talk about vigilance and just like, how do you actually respond knowing that some of these weird scenarios can happen? Like, what happens if a guy comes up to you as you're walking to your car out of the gym? What's going to happen if some guy pinches your arm and says, "Hey, nice tricep in the gym"? So let's kind of just think through, because these things could happen. And I just want you to be vigilant, aware, and, you're going to get plenty of exposure, unfortunately, like by going to this gym, but I want you to have it here with me here, because I'm ready. When you say the word, I'm going gonzo on these people, like if necessary. But they're really good. They said to me, because of our communication style, "Dad, don't say anything. Don't do anything. I'll let you know if I want you to intervene." Beautiful. And you want your kids to get to that point. And this brings us to the denouement of what I wanted to say. You're not trying to fix problems for your kids, and we'll get to boys in a second. What you're doing them is you're giving them a set of critical thinking skills, a set of situational awareness skills, and a set of flexibility skills, such that when they're almost like the Terminator, if you ever watched the movie, is all of a sudden he sees a target, and then all of a sudden this algorithm appears on the screen in terms of, do I kill? Do I just threaten them? Do I hide? Do I wait to see what they do next? You want your kid to have a whole list of psychological tools that pop up, and then they can actually, in the moment, select one, because they hear about it enough, they understand them enough. And so even if they're nervous, the tools are there for them to use. Even if it's as simple as them just putting their hand up and saying, "You know what? I got to tell you, thank you. I'm not interested." It's even a tool as simple as that. Because if a guy responds against that, and like, "Oh, come on, honey," now all of a sudden all bets are off, because it's very clear with a nonverbal and verbal gesture. And I've explained that to them. In that case, go up to any guy, look for the biggest guy in the gym. They're going to have your back, most likely, in there, or the people that work there. Nobody wants to see a young girl that's being mistreated in the gym in a public setting. And so they're learning how to use social capital that are there, who to approach, who not to approach. And no one's perfect at any of this. But the messiness, you want to hear about it, and you want to work with them in terms of how to kind of, keep on refining and sharpening the tools for the next situation.
Wow. Excellent. That's great,
dude,
John. Yeah.
One, that's incredible that you've done that for your daughters. And again, I'll just echo what I said earlier. Your daughters sound like pillars of strength to be able to say that instead of hiding underneath other words or like, hey, I can't do this on that date or whatever, they're like, hey, open and honest. Damn it! Now I forgot the term that you used earlier. Selflessly, yourself, or what was the term you used, Todd, in regards to basically authenticity, the effortlessly yourself. Yes. Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. Wow. Now turning to the other side, how do you raise your sons, right? I mean, I know you don't have sons, but how would you tell someone I do? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm basically the resident psychologist in my neighborhood, and we play pickleball, we barbecue. So everyone's always trying to get free advice. Just like, if you got that weird birthmark that's off color, you go to your favorite physician in the neighborhood. It's only fair. So there's a few things that are pretty important. I think one is you can reverse engineer that story and imagine that it's someone around my daughter's age, a 17-year-old, 18-year-old, 19-year-old boy. Now, all of a sudden, the scenario looks a little bit different than someone my age. Now it's someone. So let me pull back for a second and tell you about a very pivotal moment in the past 15 years. It was around, it was about 10 years ago. I wish I can't find the clip. It was on CNN, and there was basically a panel. It was like 3 women, 1 guy, and it was at the height of the Me Too era. And very, very, still had that very loud kind of screaming antics of journalists on TV. And everyone's yelling, men and women. But the guy pauses and he asks this question. And you could tell his voice is a little bit shaky because he knows he's out of his element here. And he just asked this question. I'm just wondering, in the workplace, though, like, if you did like somebody, like, how could you ask somebody out? And the other people on the panel just bum rushed him, just screaming, yelling. Just the fact that you asked that question means that you're on the wrong side. That's exactly what we're talking about. And I remember this moment. And again, if anyone finds this clip, email me and send it to me, because I've been wanting to show it in my classes. Because this was a moment of a guy who really did, as at least I remember it, showing genuine curiosity in a very gray, ambiguous situation where there is an attraction there. And if you're working 70 hours a week, if you're in med school, or, if you're in a physician in medical field, you don't have many hours left other than work, eat, and then maybe try to get some, physical fitness that's in there. Like, how do you do this? And a lot of people respond like, just the fact you ask, it's wrong. And so to answer that question, to offer humble opinion based by a little of science, I think, is that boys have to be trained to be extra cautious in reading cues. And that means that you have to understand, you have to teach your boys the science, which is that most men automatically assume that if someone is nice and they're a woman, and someone smiles that they're a woman, this is a sign of seduction and sexual interest. And the thing is, err on the side of assuming that's not the case. They're just being nice. So that's a really nice starting point for that. And the second part is, you shouldn't be moving into the romantic realm until there is a verbal, clear cue that you've moved into that realm by the other party that's there. So the idea, and here's how I describe it to men and to high schoolers, because there's so many boys that I meet because my girls have guy friends. And one of the things is that if you ask somebody out in the gym and they think that you are overly expressive, overly eager, or just reject the crap out of you in that scenario, well, now you're going to have a hard time going to the gym. This goes back to that old adage of like, don't shit where you eat. So you want to make sure a couple things. One, do you actually want a relationship with this person? Because assume it's probably going to go wrong. Is it going to ruin your third space? Home, school, gym, are you going to ruin it? If you think so, don't even enter the territory. But if you think that you want to give a shot for it, because of the possibility of ruining your entire warm, supportive environment that gives you psychological and physical nutriments in life, your gym, make sure you are assured, like 85% probability or less, that this is someone that's actually potentially romantically interested in you, not because you want to be fearful, because the environment is so valuable to you.
Yeah. What is it? 65%, 100% of the time it works, 65% of the time, or whatever it is. And Will Ferrell saying, but so that's an interesting. I'm glad you kind of talked through that reverse engineering side of things for young people. One, I do have a question on that, but then I want to come back to specifically young men, not that scenario, but young men expanding their definition of masculinity for themselves outside of that concrete example. But I want to come back to that concrete example. You said, don't make that move unless don't make a move unless somebody else on the other side of the relationship says something first, right? So like, essentially you're saying in a way that men need to wait until the woman makes the first move every time. Did I understand that correctly? Or
the first romantic cue.
First romantic
So this really
cue.
comes down to is like learning that there are a number of romantic cues, and what's not in those cues is someone smiling, someone agreeing with you,
okay,
someone trying to make you laugh. Like
Gotcha.
those are just signs of potentially like two people that are having a social connection.
Human.
So it has to be some else. So for example, there is an amount of time of physical contact where all of a sudden it's like, oh, hey, that was a linger that happened there, right? That's like a pretty nice clear cue. I'm not saying, I'm not suggesting like make a physical overture, but I'm saying it's like that should now move you towards the hypothesis. Like, oh, okay, like you don't normally just touch someone randomly in the gym and hold their arm. Like that's interesting, right?
Put your hand on your
now
shoulder.
Now you're moving close to the hypothesis of like, oh, they're potentially interested in me.
Right.
Now to add to your point, because I'm not saying be as passive as humanly possible because of the possible repercussions.
Right.
The other part of this is what I call, it's from some earlier work that I did that I call the discomfort caveat, which is you can open with any sort of statement, which is that, listen, I totally apologize ahead of time if I'm like in the wrong with kind of what I'm thinking here. So we've now talked for maybe like, I don't know, I think like 4.5 weeks in the gym right now. And like, it seems like we always have a good time talking to each other. Would it be evil if I said like, we should like grab a smoothie or something that happens there? So just, you're giving them an out. It's gentle. It's basically like a movie trailer to ask someone out. Now,
exactly.
And it's the exact opposite of what my girls have experienced so far in their young career of being in the romantic world, which is that men just walk over and say, hey, I want to take you out for dinner. That's the opposite of what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
So if you give the caveat, it can be playful and cute and interesting. And then they could be like, oh, you know what? I do love talking to you. You are so much fun to be around. But you know what? I'm actually not even interested in seeing a partner. And then everything's like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah. Oh man, genius. I would be taking notes, but I'm married and my wife would be angry if I take notes. Although I did take a risk, and I'm not sure if I played it right, but my wife worked for me at SEAL Team 10, and I told her that I was interested in her, and here we are, married 10 years later with 3 kids. So sometimes it can work. All right, but now let's circle back to
John, that just the way you said it, you could hear the caveat of like I know this is atypical. It sounds like so. Let me just add some dialogue for that narrative you and your wife, which I know is wrong.
I love it.
Like if this was the 1970s, I know that sometimes doctors would be like date the nurses, and sometimes you know the boss would kind of date the secretary. I know it's kind of wrong right now, like in the situation. I just want to I'm sort of interested in you. If you're not, like, just slap me across the face, like Like, physically turn me around and have me walk away. Like, I think one of the things that we forget in these very tough conversations and tough societal issues where men are acting badly, there are bad things that happen, is that we forget about levity and humor for its own sake, not as a seductive tool. And then we forget that you can use this in the beginning such that it then gives people a very nice way to easily get out.
Like it.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow.
Now
Well, that's like,
let's come back
exactly.
to the young boys. How do we teach them, that it's okay to express their feelings, that it's okay to, like, my little boy came back yesterday. He's 5. He came back from school yesterday and he said, a kid had been picking on him. Like, and the alpha male in me, if you will, was like, well, why don't you kick his ass? I mean, I did not say that to my 5-year-old, but there's a part of me that thought that. And then I was like, okay, what's happening? And he started to tear up. And, there's not a single part of me that's like wants to tell him, hey, don't freaking cry. But there are men out there that do that. How do we tell our kids it's okay to express their feelings, and how can they take care of themselves as young boys?
Yeah. You brought up a very challenging situation because you have so the word bullying, kind of like trauma and kind of like privilege, are overused terms. So because bullying, the true definition is it has to be a recurrent thing that happens where someone is intentionally trying to harm and victimize someone else. And when your kid comes home and says that someone picked on them, it's not necessarily bullying.
Right.
Sometimes it's actually a form of someone trying to like show they like somebody.
Yeah.
Very often.
That's what I've told my little girls. I'm like, little boys are picking on you because they like you.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes. Yeah. So in this scenario, let me highlight the most important part. And so I sort of pull back for a second. Related concept. I've always trained all 3 of my girls is that in the house, you have to feel psychologically safe. This was before the term was psychological safety was a term used in the workplace.
Right.
Such that you can say anything you want, and we will work with that content here because this is the gym. This is the training ground. Like here, like you cannot be rejected, ostracized, mentally harmed here. You get to call it out, and I'm going to jump in if necessary. So when dad or mom like comes in and tells the kid that, listen, you can't cry here, you are not making a psychologically safe environment here. So this is independent of the conversation of what's acceptable for emotional expression at school, on the playground, on the athletic field. For right now, let's say that's a different question. In the household, all bets are off. Everything is acceptable. There's an article that's going to come out tomorrow in Provoked. Actually, well, it'll already come out by the time this is released.
Right.
Where I talk about how just yesterday, from this conversation now, my child was Googling child abuse, thinking that I hit them, and they want to know, is it child abuse, and how do they report it, and should they report it? And I wrote this whole article about it. It's going to come out tomorrow. And it was a really tough situation because, I mean, you get defensive. It's the worst thing you can imagine. Like, oh my God, like, and ended up being, long story short, is that she was blowing spit bubbles, and I playfully slapped her in the face to kind of get the spit bubble out, and it hurt her, and I apologized. And then later, when she had a meltdown, and I told her, I'm like, listen, I would never intentionally harm you. Like, I was just being playful and a goofball, and like normally, like, we slap box each other, and like I was expect you to hit me back, and I was all ready for it, and I didn't know it had that big an influence. And then as we got further, I said, I noticed that when you really started getting upset after this happened was when we were shopping, and then I bought some skincare products for your older sisters, and you wanted some, and I didn't buy them for you. She said, yeah, I feel like you give them more attention because they work out with you, and you have this different relationship with them, and you talk about meal prepping, and I'm like just left out.
Oh, wow.
This whole thing was not about me slapping her. This was about she feels disconnected from me. And if I didn't go through all of the steps to have this conversation and slowly, openly, like, and just kind of like letting my heart bleed out onto the floor with her, we wouldn't have got to the point. Is that the hitting part in her head was inside the category of, you don't like me as much as my older sisters. And that's where the real thing was. And so I bring up this story because I think we get our signals mixed up and we miscategorize just like our kids do. So when a kid gets upset when they come home from school because they were taunted and they were abused by another kid at school, when you tell them that there is an appropriate way to express their emotions and they're not doing it right then and there, you're basically doing the form of communication to say is that you don't respect me enough that I can actually have the whole range of human experiences. I have to act in a certain way to win your affection and love. It's conditional. And if you think about it in those ways, maybe those people that listen will actually think to themselves, this isn't about the emotion that your kid is experiencing. This is now an opportunity to say is that the whole range of what you do, what you experience, what you accomplish and don't accomplish in life, I truly will be there. And this is not a bumper sticker slogan.
Awesome.
Wow. Excellent. What about let's get into this, like expanding masculinity, right? And, which is, I really love what you wrote here, but also you write it for expanding definition for boys. Right? I want to kind of I'll make your life a little easier, Todd. I'm going to read through this list. Okay. Like you said earlier, right? But also I want you to keep in mind, we have our audience is 45 or maybe 35 to 60 years old, and you talk about boys, how, men that are listening, how can they kind of, expand their masculinity. So you have here, teach boys it's okay to express emotions openly, encourage them to talk about feelings and show compassion towards others, encourage them to share their fears, insecurities and dreams with others. Second one, set a good example of what a healthy relationship looks like. Teach boys the importance of respect, communication, and consent in all relationships. Third one, redefine strength, not just as a physical power, but so as mental resilience and the ability to overcome adversity. Another one is encourage boys, right, to explore a wide range of interests, whether it's art, music, sports, or science. Let them know that their passions and interests are valid and valuable. And there's two more. Teach boys that taking care of their physical, mental, and emotional health is important. Encourage them to engage in self-care activities such as exercise, meditation, or spending time in nature. And there are two more. Encourage boys to express themselves creatively, whether it's through, I already said that. Art, dance,
close,
music.
Good.
Yeah, whether through art, music, writing, or dance. Let them know that their creative expressions are valued and appreciated. And last, encourage boys to stand up for others and be allies. Teach them the importance of speaking out against injustice and supporting those who are marginalized or oppressed. The great definition of this is I want more of all these human beings. Yeah, you wrote that, Todd. Todd Cashdan wrote that, everybody. And it's fucking brilliant. And it's the kind of the world that I want to see, right?
Yeah.
That's evolving all the time. So if you just take us into this expansive definition, but also being aware of we have an older audience here. How could they use any of these 7, or how could they start to take steps into these 7 and bring it into their lives?
Yeah, because I don't think we just want all of us who are older to just God, I wish that's how my parents, my teachers, and my coaches treated me as younger. Because I think we all have that kind of old in common. Yeah, I think a good starting point is to really lead with agreeableness and this capacity to love and be loved as you walk through the world. And I'll give you just an example. I sort of reduced my alcohol intake pretty excessively once I turned 50 this year, just realizing it affects my sleep and I don't need it to be on. This is my energy level all the time. So there's no liquid courage necessary. Now, one of the things I replaced it with was instead of meeting guys, my male friends at the bar and female friends, we take walks. Like we take evening walks. My kids regularly make fun of me. Like, hey, your boyfriend's here at the door. Like, what? How many men are you dating? That's like
How
the
many
third
men? Oh
guy
my God, hilarious.
came
I
over
love them.
this week. You're such a slut. And so we go on these long walks. And one of the things of men compared to women is if you look at the stature when a conversation is happening, do this after you listen to this podcast, you will find that women are facing a complete, like, singular 180-degree line between the two people in terms of eye contact to eye contact, where men tend to send slant at about 20 to 30 degrees from each other. So it's this very bizarre the geometry of connections, we'll call it.
Interesting.
And it's almost like I don't want to be fully intimate with you, like in this conversation. I'm like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, kind of a little bit that happens there. But when you're walking, you're not facing each other. It's amazing how much that you reveal. So that's one part in terms of, can you have interactions that involve around the gradual, reciprocal self-disclosure of personal information about yourselves? And part two is, as you're on this walk, can you engage in the things that bring you joy, irrespective of what society deems you should? So, for example, one thing that I started doing, and so this has been going on for about 3 months now, and this is still amazing me, how I basically freaking say hello to everybody who passes by. That is not part of my personality at all. It's just, slight modification. It's changed. Like, I'll just pass you by. I'm like, hey, how you doing? Like, hey, morning. Hey, afternoon. Hey, good evening. To every single person, I'm not stopping them. And it is like amazing how these half-second interactions make you feel this sense of belonging. And when you feel this sense of belonging, you're more inclined to actually share some of the fragile elements of like what you've been feeling or thinking lately. And the other part that's weird is how often I find when I go on these walks with people that one of us will be like, holy crap, you see that salamander? Like, that just flew over the sidewalk. And then all of a sudden you've got two middle-aged men that look like little kids that are on their knees trying to find like a blue grayish salamander that went into the grass. And again, that's not something that I would typically do at other points in my lives. And what I would argue is that when you open yourselves up to pure communication as a man with other men, and most men say that they only do this with their friends who are women, but with other male friends, that you don't have to compete with each other. It could be a cooperative enterprise. And just take note to the small modifications to how you respond to the world, yourself, and other people when you kind of have this attitude of generosity. And one thing that I do also on these walks is I ask really deep questions, the type of questions where people often would say, which is like, you can't ask someone how much money they make. Like, that's not an appropriate question. You can't ask like, how's their relationship with their wife of 7 years? Like, it's none of your business. And what I would argue is that, and I feel very strongly about this, is no question should be off limits if it comes from a place of generosity and curiosity.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. I think that's probably a good stopping point, because how do you go on from there? Right? Yeah. Todd, this has been awesome, man. I really appreciate you running through this all with us, and sharing how men can grow, men can express themselves, men can be, damn it, I forgot the term again. Effortlessly themselves. Thank you, man. My memory is failing me today, but yeah, how we can be effortlessly ourselves, and how much healthier and happier we can be in just doing that. So, Will, I started to wrap it up. I don't know, man. Did you have anything else there?
No, I love, what also, it's like how getting in the heads of our community of like what we can do in order to create more healthy boys in this world that don't step in to this destructive masculine paradigm that the three of us are continually working against. Like, this is like really, it's so I love what you said, Todd, about creating a home that is a safe space.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up with a lot of judgment. I see it in other people in my family, and that just really shuts you down. It's like you are not allowed to, a lot of men and are just not allowed to express themselves emotionally. And then where does that go? Then where is your outlet? Or then you bottle it all up inside. Like, we didn't even get to like a piece of your article. It's like a lot of men, when they don't feel this kind of like connection to the world, a deeper connection to itself, a sense of like effortless expression and authenticity, they go to the bottom they go to the drink, and they just numb themselves. And so many men out there I saw a guy this weekend, who, I met at some, at some Army game last year, I saw him at some event this past weekend, and he's, just like you mentioned, Todd, as well. And I'm in the same boat. Like, I just stopped drinking at all. Like, I mean, not all. Like, I mean, I'll pick my spots. But this other guy that I met, he stopped drinking, and he's just starting to really wake up in the sense of like, realized, I guess, how much he's very successful. Like, he had incredible, like the industry he was in and what he's accomplished. But now he's like starting to see, and he's like our age, like, in his like 50 or maybe a little older, but he's starting to see himself in a new way. And also realizing, like, I guess how much time he's wasted, with doing different things that haven't really served like the ambitions that he has, like, in who he wants to be. But it's like, we have this ability. I think it's how important, the last thing, Dan, how important is it? I'm sorry, Dan Cashdan. Sorry, Todd. Sorry, that's my brother.
That's a mispronunciation.
Sorry, Todd. Sorry, I was just abbreviating your name.
Don't.
Todd, how important it is for men to connect with other good men. Like, you talked about your walks. Like, I think that's brilliant. And this is a real way that we can start to connect with men. And I know, and like that like, and have those meaningful conversations. Like, how about we end on that? Like, is it important to connect with other men? Yeah.
I love the story that you just gave. I wrote another article about the power and the pain of divorcing your friends. And there's a lot of men that I've divorced over the past 15 years of realizing they bring out an older version of myself that I don't identify with anymore. Just a little bit too hypersexual, send those images and trust me, I'm not trying to sound like the most virtuous person on the planet here. I don't have to go through all of my dark picadillos here, but it's just like you bring out the 18-year-old version of me. Now, I love the 18-year-old version of me, but I'm not the 18-year-old version of me anymore. And that's that's a conversation that people don't have about, like, sometimes like you outgrow your friends. And so I think you're really onto something, where is that one of the things, the beauties of going into your 30s, 40s, and beyond is that we can be more discerning, is that we don't have unlimited time in a week. And do you really need 8 different boyfriends to go for walks with in a week? Or is it that basically is like, if the top 2 people keep on hanging out over and over again, I mean, it's so chill. It's so easy. Like, they know so much about me. When I meet these guys regularly, and they're one of the things that's very attractive to me is like really good fathers. Like, that I would have never guessed at 21. This is a really big quality. How I pick my men in my life is like, when I see you're just not really a good father, I don't want to be around that. Like, just because all I want to do is give you tips of like what the hell are you doing? And then the other part is one of the male friend divorce I had is the way he treated his wife, is that she would often want to come out with us to go to a fire pit to hang out at their house and smoke cigars and drink. She's like, "Oh yeah, Todd's here. I want to come too." And he'd be like, No. It's just me and Todd. And I'm like, No. I'm like, dude, I haven't seen her in so long. Like, have her come out. Like, let her come out. Like, it's her house. I'm just the guest. And after a while, I realized, like, I don't like this whole dynamic is so weird to me that, like, it's like the Taliban. Like, you get to control your wife going into her own backyard when I'm there. And just like, that's my number one value is autonomy and supporting autonomy. So I want to be around people that have that values. So that's my long answer in terms of like, choose people that are around you that like really bring out the sides of you that make you feel extremely good about. I'm not talking about emotion. I'm talking about sides of your personality. They bring out those sides where it's like, it's the thoughtful side. It's plus the goofy side, like plus like the really deep caring side. And yet, like, they freaking, they curse like a truck driver at the same time. Like, whatever your combination is you want, because that's like what I like. Then make sure that there's pretty good prototype matching.
Right. Yeah. That's a great advice.
I love divorcing your friends. That's great.
I've divorced a lot of them.
A lot of them. So I probably need to divorce some
that would be another good episode.
Yeah. As a matter of fact,
how to divorce your friends. That's a great idea. How to divorce your friends. Or why file for divorce?
Yeah.
Anyway, friends,
well, hey, Todd.
This has been great, Todd.
It has been, man. And we want to share. You're obviously on Substack, where Will and I found you, or at least found this article after being introduced to it. And you've got your book, or several books. You got your Art of Insubordination, The Upside of Your Dark Side. How can other people find you and your works, and how can we share that?
No, thank you. Listen, the two of you, we could be talking for another 5.5 hours.
Easily.
I have more energy than when I started, which is my number one indicator of did I have a good time in a conversation.
Awesome.
The best way to find me is Substack is named Provoked. And it has access. You'll get all the websites to get my scientific articles for free and everything else. And that's the best place to find me.
Right on. Yeah. There we go. And we'll make sure that's included in the show notes. I know you're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We'll make sure all those are in the show notes as well. But Todd, it's been awesome having you here, brother. Thank you for sharing this article. Thank you for sharing your wisdom today with us. And thank you for what you're doing. Will, I'll turn it over to you to wrap it up.
No, we're going to have you back, Todd. Thank you. This has been great. We do have good vibes here. And
for sure.
You have a wealth of knowledge, and, we're just trying to help men connect more intimately to themselves and other men in the world. And it's our mission, and you're on that mission too. And we really thank you for being here today and sharing everything that the knowledge you've gained and the wisdom by the actions you've taken. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I love what you do. So when you say jump, I'm on. I'm back.
All right, brother. Yeah, next week. Happen. As a matter of fact, come back in a couple of hours.
I'm going to come over for a walk. I'm just going to show the fuck up, Todd. I'm going to come for one of those walks.
Another one from the podcast.
All right, Todd, and for our audience, thank you for joining us today. Until next time, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Peace.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you walk away with some new tools and insights to guide you on your life journey. New episodes are being published every week, so please join us again for some meaningful discussion. For more information, please check out mentalkingmindfulness.com.